For those of you who are watching this episode right now, last week we had a top 10 segment, and we did our top our 10 through 6 essentially, and this week is going to be our top 5 of our potential doomsday theories.
Death and
Some of which
destruction.
death and destruction. Some of which are death and destruction. I mean, they're pretty much all death and destruction if you really want to get down to it.
Yeah.
But some of them are more so like, you know, more plausible than others. Some of them are definitely conspiracy theory based, and some of them we just, they're just fun to think about, honestly, in a sense. We really never know what's going to happen. But I'm going to be kicking off this week with number 5, and it is the second coming of Jesus Christ. So obviously this has been in the religious world, or just honestly in any part of the world, this has been a hefty topic because as of, I'd probably say like the past couple of years, this has been a very much so more talked about topic because people, as soon as something astronomical happens in our world or whatever the case may be, everyone's like, Jesus is coming back. So I'm going to kind of tell you why I think this could be plausible, but then I'm going to tell you why this probably will not happen anytime soon, if at all. But it's going to happen at some point. We just don't know when. So when you look at it from a biblical standpoint, there's multiple, and I don't have the exact scriptures. I have what the scriptures are, but I don't have what they say. So in multiple scriptures, both in the Old Testament and New Testament, there's obviously descriptions of when Jesus Christ is going to return. Now, for those of you who don't know, and again, I'm still learning, obviously, biblically how to obviously interpret scripture and what it means and stuff like that. But in the last book, in Revelations, it talks about that when Jesus comes back, it's not just going to be like a bright and shining light coming through the sky. Like the sky's going to actually rip open, like all this other kind of stuff is going to happen, but it's actually going to be over the course of 7 days. So it's not what people think is going to happen, where it's just, he's just going to come down, we're all going to go where we're going to go and be done with it. There's going to be 7 angels that are going to come down previous to when Jesus is coming back, and to start this all off, and they're each going to blow a trumpet sound, essentially. And, obviously, this is my entire, like, what I understand is going to happen. So anyone out there who is a pastor, anyone, including my own, if he happens to listen to this, I'm so sorry. We'll talk about it later.
No, you're doing good. You're doing good. But one thing you have to wonder is, like, wouldn't it be terrifying if you started hearing trumpets all of a sudden and you had no explanation for where the heck that sound was coming from?
That's how it's supposed to start. So it's like with each trumpet sound, it's a different day. So the first angel is going to come down and blow his trumpet. Now, what's supposed to happen during that 7 days is the most excruciating, painful, everything that's supposed to happen. And obviously, I can't remember if it happens before this or after this, but essentially anyone who is going to heaven is going to get, taken up to heaven. And then anyone who's left here on earth is going to deal with whatever, your judgment, your condemnation, essentially. And so that's kind of how it's supposed to work out. Now, again, at the end of the day, you're still going to have judgment from God himself, to determine. But if you're one of those chosen people, at the end of the day, if you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, that's, you are saved from eternal condemnation. That's how the Bible perceives it as. Now, the only reason I don't know when it's going to happen. Even the Bible says itself that nobody knows when this is going to happen. The only one that knows is God himself. Like, he knows when it's supposed to happen. It's going to be his decision. Like, it could happen tomorrow. But the reason why I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon is because that's the reasoning behind it. Nobody knows at the end of the day. And with all these events that are happening, I mean, people talked about like, oh, well, when the Euphrates River dries up over in Israel, like, and this war happens. Well, currently there's a war happening right now. The river's dried up. Nothing's happening. The solar eclipse happened. Well, people were talking about how the solar eclipse was relating to Jesus saw I don't know how often you get on Facebook now, but you saw posts about like, oh, this eclipse is going this way, which is going to create this symbol, which is this symbol for this, and biblically, we don't know when it's going to happen. Now, obviously, again, throughout the signs of history and everything like that, kind of what we talked about in the previous episode, it's the earth got destroyed by water during the first, obviously, the Great Flood, and then the second time it's going to be destroyed by fire. Realistically, we don't know what is in store. We don't know what's going to actually happen. We just try to interpret the best we can, but we don't interpret that kind of stuff because we don't know when it's going to happen. Now, as far as like, there's no specific order of these top 10, but the one that, if you're looking at it from a biblical standpoint, you actually have this text right here in front of you that outlines everything, this is probably the most believable one to happen because of that, next to like your World War III and things like that. So
that really is the $1 million question, though, is when does it happen? There's a really interesting theory that I don't necessarily believe in, but I like to entertain the idea that it's already happened, and this is like the aftermath of that. And the theory goes into, I don't have any like substantial evidence to back up this theory. It's just a fun theory you read on the dark sides of the internet. But it's talking about how if you think about the concept of time, it's a human constructed measuring system, right?
Mm-hmm.
60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 24 hours in a day, like. That's all arbitrary. We just kind of put some labels on things and the world works around that. But who's not to say that in the eyes of an all-knowing entity, God, for lack of a better term, who's not to say an hour in that perspective could be 1,000 years for us, or like some other arbitrary conversion there. Like, time doesn't really, I mean, what do I know? But I would imagine time doesn't really matter for something like that, you know?
I think that's actually, I don't think, again, I could be wrong. I don't think that's mentioned specifically in the Bible, but I'm pretty sure I've talked about that with some of the people in our church before, that time for God isn't perceived the same way that time for us is. So it's the same thing, because like he's the Alpha, the Omega, like the beginning and the end. So it's like he precedes in any time frame that we could understand. And so him just being wherever it is that he's at, that's, which obviously we talked about it in Bible study, I believe, but it's like heaven is where, like, so if you're in heaven, then you're with God. But if you're not with God, then you're in hell, like in your own world, essentially. So it's like being with him, being at peace, means that you're within that heaven. And so there's definitely a lot of stuff out there, but it all boils down to like there's so many misconceptions about it that people think that because all this stuff is happening in our world and everything's going on, like, oh, he's coming back. Now, do I think we're in the end times? I've had this conversation with plenty of people before. I don't think we're necessarily in the end times, but I do think it's only a matter of time, though, at some point before we actually start seeing signs of like actual in-depth signs, not just the stuff that people were just quoting from the Bible, because at the end, we don't know when it's going to happen. Nobody knows. So why sit here and predict when we could just live, and then whenever it happens, it happens?
And you're spot on. It truly is just a matter of time. Now, is that time a week? Is it a year? Is it a decade? Is it an eon? Who knows? But it is factually a matter of time. You want to know what else is a matter of time? What's that? EMP attack. Do you know what an EMP is?
Electromagnetic Pulse.
Yes. I don't think a lot of people in everyday life think about this. Probably you could say that for almost everything we've talked about so far. But an EMP, like you mentioned, is it's basically a device that, when activated or turned on, or activated, I guess for lack of a better term, it can basically turn off and make useless all electronic devices within the radius of that attack. So there's so many different ways that this could go down. There's the one that scares a lot of people is like the briefcase EMP attack, where you can leave something the size of a briefcase somewhere, and then within like, you know, a 10-mile block radius, basically deactivate all electronic devices within that area. And it's not just like turning off the device, it's like making the device unusable. So anything that has basically a chip or an electric current that runs through it, so your car, your watch, anything in your home, like, becomes completely pointless and unusable. So think about everything that you rely on a daily basis that involves an electric current. If that were to go offline, that's going to cause some panic and some chaos. Now, imagine if you're someone that has something internally that keeps you alive that also relies on electricity. It'll shut that thing off too. Now, one thing I tied into this kind of like point is you have the scenario of an EMP attack, so like a foreign adversary, you know, attacking domestically and turning off electronic devices. It could be simple things like a power grid or like a city center, but you also have the solar flare version of this as well, where this has actually happened historically before. You had something called the Carrington event. It took off, or it deactivated a lot of the telegraph lines, and we didn't really have too many electronics in 1859 when it happened, but we do have written record. We knew it happened. We knew it kind of got screwy with some of our infrastructure, but imagine having that in a modern setting where you have a sun flare or a solar flare that hits our atmosphere, and like, just imagine not being able to use lights, a car, filter your water. Like, it's just going to set you back 100 years. And there's going to be a lot of people that will not know how to operate on a daily basis without that. Nor, like, even from my perspective, like, yeah, I could make it happen. Do I want to make it happen? I don't know. Life would be real terrible if you have no electronic accessories to use on a daily basis.
I think, and call me crazy, but I mean, if something like that was to happen, I think that could probably be. Now, eventually at some point, yeah, it comes back up. Now, I know that there's the time frame that they said that if the infrastructure, like the power grid was supposed to go down, like was to go down here in our country, it would take, what, like 6 months to a year to come back up or something like that?
Just
like,
for small segments. Like, the whole thing would take decades.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that just as a world, I don't think it would necessarily be a bad thing, because I think some people need to learn how to live without that technology to an extent. Like, you don't need to be, and this is coming from someone who unfortunately works a job where I have to have my cell phone, I have to have my laptop, like I have to have all this stuff. But it's like, I think people could do with some more, you know, heart to heart, face to face interactions without having technology. Like, now, would it suck travel wise because you couldn't drive your car, your Tesla, whatever the case may be? Sure, but I just think there's a right place and a wrong place for it to happen. And now, if obviously if the solar flare was to happen and it was to cause, you know, obviously an EMP, which seems to be the more likely version that would happen, I think, before an attack, so to speak. That's just pure speculation on that, because if it was going to happen with a country, or, you know, obviously government, or country versus country, or just warfare,
or just a terrorist attack,
we would have already have seen that with everything that we've seen in the past 25 years. Just saying. I mean, there's been so much that's happened that why have they not used an EMP before? You know? So, like, I feel like as far as like a natural state of things, I feel like a solar flare would probably be the more likely aspect to happen. And at that point, you really don't have a choice but to learn how to live without your cell phone and your technology. Would it suck? Sure. But what are you going to do?
Yeah, the thing I'll come back to is, like, where would you get your water? Where would you get clean drinking water? Think about that right now. Like, where would you actually get your clean drinking water?
Would you believe me if I said that I have books that teach you how to properly filter your water without having to have an electric filtration system?
No, I believe that, and I know it's possible.
That you can collect, yeah.
But how do you, first of all, where are you going to get the water? Maybe you get it from a nearby lake or pond. How do you protect it? How do you ensure no one takes it from you? I know, but
If you just look right here, this is how I protect my water.
yeah, I know. But if you had a group of 20 or so angry individuals that also wanted your water, remember, we're in dense, urban, populated areas.
I mean, I have a 100-round drum magazine that I could use if need be. But
I know, but can you imagine the mental mindset you would have to be in to get to that point?
Yeah, and that's true because, and I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. So, like, as we've gone, and yes, I showed my rifle, not an attempt to like, oh, like he's a gun. Like, okay, yeah, I'm a gun owner. I do own firearms.
How dare you?
I know, the same people who want to protect the First Amendment right, shame on me for wanting to protect the Second Amendment. My bad. But but people have to realize in scenarios like this is like a last resort. Here's the thing, I have guns. I hope that I never have to fire around at any particular person. I hope that I never, like, if I'm going to the range, that's one thing. If I'm practicing with my firearms, that's one thing. I hope that I never have to draw my gun on anybody and shoot anybody. That's my one and only hope. I would love to just die without ever having to fire a shot on anybody. Unfortunately, that is not the world that we live in. We live in a world that if things got, like during COVID, okay, you saw how, like, city people were taking over city blocks and not letting law enforcement, not letting, first responders in there. People were just getting shot, killed, like all kinds of stuff was happening. There comes a point in time where you have to really do some serious soul searching and you have to determine if you want to protect what's yours or not. And I've had conversations with people about this and they're like, oh, well, I'll just do this. I'm like, okay, cool, you could do that, but while someone's breaking and entering into your house and you're trying to call the cops and you're waiting 10 minutes for them to show up versus like someone breaks into my house, okay, you take one step past that threshold and you're not supposed to be here, then unfortunately, not only are we going to have to call the cops, we're going to have to call an ambulance as well. So, and that's just the unfortunate scenario. So when you live in that time period, going back to what you were saying, people are in that mindset. I'm not the only one that's in that mindset where I have to protect what I have, but people are in that mindset where they're going to fight to get what they want. And so there comes like that switch that you have to flip on where it's like, it's either kill or be killed in those scenarios. And I honestly hate talking about that. I really do. As being a pro Second Amendment right person, I hate talking about that kind of stuff because it's not a situation where anyone wants to be in. Nobody parades around like, oh, I want someone to come off at me. So no, as a gun owner, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to have a clear level head as to what you're supposed to be doing. And so, and utilizing your firearm. So it's kind of going back to, back to what you were saying, where you're going to get water from, how you're going to protect it, how you're going to do all your stuff. I mean, that is how I'm going to protect it, but that's going to be a last resort. And hopefully I don't live in a urban area. I'd rather live out in the country by the time all this stuff happens so that I would know that I have my area, that I know where everything's at. So,
yeah. So really in our second part of this top 10 countdown, we had number 5, which is the second coming. Number 4, an EMP or solar attack. Number 3, Riley with a rifle.
Exactly.
I'm totally kidding. But I know I kind of alluded to this one in part 1, but I know for number 3, we have something that's very large and very scary. It may have taken out the dinosaurs many eons ago. What you got for number 3?
We have an asteroid impact. Now this one, I gotta say, I don't want to say I'm dumbfounded, but do you know how many times in the past, like, we'll just say 10 years, that NASA has come out and said, oh, we have an asteroid that's very well going to impact our Earth on this day at this time, and it doesn't happen?
Yeah, but let me counter with something even more wild. Do you know how many meteors have hit the Earth in the last 2 years? Hundreds.
Well, okay. Small. Okay, now how big
Yeah.
are they though? Realistically, like it
Some
could be.
pretty good size. Not, of course, earth-ending because
Yeah.
yeah. Here, continue what you're saying, and I'll pull up a map here in a second.
So there has been, in those last two, like I think actually most recently, they're like in this year alone, they talked about one asteroid that is actually it's on track to go by our planet. I don't know when, but I'm almost positive they talked about something that it could actually be like it's either this year or next year. That it could be the size of like an asteroid that could end the planet. And I'm like, how many times have they talked about an asteroid that's come so close to our planet that it could actually end it? Again, this is kind of where it comes into play, kind of going back to what we talked about at number 5, where if it's ordained to happen, it would happen. But I don't think that that's how our planet is supposed to end. Now, again, I can't control what happens with our planet. I can't control what happens in our solar system. I can't control what happens in everything that has, transpired scientifically. Can't control it. That's not what we do. Now, if I'm not mistaken, there was the same meteor or asteroid that I was talking about. They said that they have a way to direct it away from our planet. Now, again, I don't know what all NASA's working on. I don't know what all they got cooking, but we realistically don't know when or if, this could happen.
Yeah. No, you're spot on. They theoretically have ways to deter it, but then also wonders like, well, if that doesn't work, does it make it worse sometimes? Like if they accidentally push it more into us and they don't mean to. What I just threw up on the screen though is small asteroids that disintegrated in Earth's atmosphere, but did technically like target Earth. This is between 1994 and 2013. During the daytime, 255. During nighttime, 301. And it's just interesting. It's like spread all across the map. And you can see the larger the circle, the larger it was. Now, none of them are too crazy violent because obviously we didn't hear too much about any of these. But it is interesting thing about a lot do come through our atmosphere and our neck of the woods. It does get scary to think about that at any moment one of those could be the one.
So did you know that the crater that for the first asteroid is still, I'm pretty sure it's actually still visible, like you can still see it on our planet?
I know there's a large number of craters, of impacts.
So I'm trying to find an actual...
have you ever heard of the Tunguska event? It's in Siberia, and it's basically an asteroid or meteor exploded a mile or so above the ground, and it cleared hundreds of miles worth of trees. And we actually got it on photograph. It's pretty wild.
Okay. So this is the asteroid crater that actually, you can look at it from a different map perspective. They actually have it turned.
Oh, is that in the Yucatan?
That is in
where is that at?
Near
the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah,
the Yucatan is that little peninsula that sticks out.
Yeah, so that's actually the original crater. Now take that into size comparison. I'm pretty sure that's around the size of Texas.
It's something, yeah. It's. I mean, it literally wiped out almost all life.
Yeah. Now, taking into perspective, though, obviously we've had asteroids that have come towards our planet. They have actually come into contact, but they've obviously broken down, and before they've actually impacted the Earth. Therefore, nothing's actually happened. I think for an asteroid to actually wipe us out, it would have to be on par with that. Have you seen that movie Greenland?
Yeah.
You're right, yeah. So something similar to that, where it's it breaks apart, but the impact of the smaller ones are still large enough to do damage elsewhere on the planet versus that last big one that hasn't come down yet.
Definitely, yeah.
I just don't think... I mean, granted, we're only one planet away from our asteroid belt, like obviously Mars and then our asteroid belt, but that's so far away that when NASA comes out and is like, hey, like we see an asteroid that could come close to hitting us, and then it doesn't even come close, but yeah, you never know.
Yeah, no, just to kind of go right in line with everything you just said. So this is the Tunguska event, happened in 1908 in Siberia. So it basically wiped out 770 square miles. It was like a meteor that, or was it technically an asteroid? I forget. But it basically blew up in the atmosphere, but caused like a nuclear blast to everything below it. And it wiped out, like you can see a photograph of like all the trees missing basically. But it was just like a massive thing. And this could happen, imagine if this happened over Dallas. Like it just happened to be Siberia. Imagine if this happened over any major metropolitan area and it just leveled it.
That because like I'm reading the description of it, and it's like despite having 1,000 times the energy of an atomic bomb, it left no crater, nothing. And that to me, like that's interesting because it's just like when an asteroid hits, I mean, yeah, it's coming fast. Like it's heating up, it's coming fast, and the fact that we had one, 66 million years ago that destroyed all life on the planet, and then now we're where we're at now. Again, I could definitely see this happening. I could see this as being a more plausible one because, again, it's science. We can't control science. We don't know what our solar system is doing. We don't, obviously, gravitational pull, all this additional stuff. We don't really know when this could happen. Now, I was trying to look up to see when the most recent impact happened, but it's obviously could not find anything. I mean, they showed like one that was like 2023, but they were like smaller meteors that did next to nothing. So if that was to happen, and that again, that could be the when we kind of go back to like, the second coming and like God will destroy the world by fire. He could bring another asteroid and be like, here you go, like this is it. But I don't know. I realistically don't know with that, and with it being a science-based thing, it's hard to tell with that. And we can only really go off what our government says and what the scientists obviously say. So,
do you think they would tell us if they found something that they knew was like the oh shit moment? Do you think they'd tell us? Or do you think they'd let us just like, don't tell them, let them live their lives? Like, and those that had the ability to maybe hedge their bet and protect themselves would go do so, but the vast majority of the population would just be left not knowing until they like look up and they're like, oh, hey, look, like there's a new star in the sky. And then they quickly realize, why is that star getting bigger every night? Oh, that's weird.
Right.
Yeah.
I could see it. So obviously, kind of the same as like what we talked about with the zombie apocalypse and having, mainstream media that comes out with movies and such. I could see it being like if they knew that they had a chance at rebuilding civilization, which, let's be honest, I mean, if a meteor wipes out the entire planet, it's going to be the same premise because you're not going to have the natural resources there to rebuild with. Like, and it's going to be nothing but just like molten rock and all this other, like, just, it's going to be, awful.
Yeah.
I could see it being a scenario where, yeah, they're probably not going to tell people. Let them just live their lives like we know this is going to happen. Because realistically, if you tell everybody, well, they're going to go buy all the toilet paper because they think that that's going to save their. They think that that's going to save their lives.
Spot on.
And so it's like I think you'll just incite panic that way, because like knowing that the end is near, realistically, you'll probably start seeing a bunch of, people starting to do whatever they want. Laws are going to it's going to be the same thing as most other, apocalyptic type things, because people aren't going to abide by laws anymore. They're going to do what they want to do. We're going to see robberies, murders. Nobody's going to know what to do. People are just going to do whatever. So I think that they would either not tell people and just let it be, because realistically they know what's going to happen. And I don't think even any millionaire or billionaire is going to have a chance of surviving, because I don't care what kind of bunker you build. What are you going to come back to? I survived. I'm a billionaire, but I don't have my money now because all the banks are gone. What are you surviving for?
Good point.
And that's kind of my whole thing with like the billionaires and millionaires buying these bunkers and stuff, because it's like, don't get me wrong, I have my fair share of like, okay, cool, like I have my stockpile of a few things, but if the world is actually destroyed, you have no infrastructure, you have no banking system, you're not a billionaire anymore. You're just you're going to be a caveman at that point. And then the other way I could see it playing out is it could be something similar to Greenland, where they only certain people are going to get that phone call, or like that emergency phone call that's like, you and so have been selected to, so it's only going to be like, your architects, your doctors.
Oh wait, hang on, I'm getting a text message.
Yeah.
Oh hey,
Yeah.
I might have to end the episode early. Sorry, I hate to. I'm just kidding.
I was like, well, what kind of job are you actually doing over there, buddy?
Yeah.
But no, it's it only did like the most important of the important people, like scientists, things like that, are actually going to be able to go to these bunkers. But I don't know. Again, it all comes up to like, I don't. I know NASA is technically a government entity to an extent, but I feel like some of them would still tell people about it. I feel like they couldn't let it not be a thing. Like, they're like, hey, like, reconcile with whoever you need to reconcile with, talk with your loved ones, be with your loved ones, like, do all this other kind of stuff, like, because we're done. Like, we're done for. But again, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it'd be like the movie Don't Look Up, where you have like a small portion of the scientists really trying to tell the general public, while everyone else is like, nah, we're going to have fun, we're going to party, just don't look up. Life's right. Simpler if you just don't look up.
Don't look up, yeah.
Yeah. Man, so one thing that I think is very plausible within our lifetime, I know a lot of things we've been talking about, some of it could happen in our lifetime, some of it could happen thousands of years from now, who knows. I think one thing we could theoretically live through is like an AI takeover. And what I mean by that, I don't think it's going to be like iRobot within our lifetime, at least. Maybe it will be. I don't know. But what's really interesting to think about is like the rapid advancement that we've seen just in the last 2-3 years alone with artificial intelligence. It's only a matter of time that it becomes sentient. And for all we know, maybe it already is sentient. One of the large language learning models could potentially already be sentient. I know they had, what was his name? I'm going blank on his name. I didn't put it in the notes, but there was a Google engineer that had been working on artificial intelligence. He was considered like the godfather of AI. He'd been working on it since the 70s. But he most recently was kind of got famous again because he had retired from Google, because he no longer, what was it exactly? He no longer believed that what Google was doing was in the best interest of humanity. And he also believed that it was a lot worse than what the general public was aware of. Because we have to remember what we use, whether it be ChatGPT, Google Gemini, any of these other AI models, like that's what's available to the public. What is the true version or the most up-to-date version of this that's just in research and development that's not available to the general public yet?
And this kind of actually goes back to one of the ones we talked about in the last episode, but what, like, obviously with the nuclear warfare, what if they utilize AI to automatically target what, because obviously you said like they have a short list of like people who would probably, who would have because realistically you have a short list of who would fire off the missiles. So it's like if one missile was fired off and then the U.S. is like, hey, we're about to dump our entire payload, they could just use AI to automatically track it to go to each of those countries, essentially.
Exactly. Like, at what point did you ever see the movie Her? Where the guy falls in love with the AI on his phone?
Yeah.
There's a scene in that movie, and I don't know if you remember, it's kind of like spoiler alert if you haven't seen the movie, it's been out like a decade already, but there's a scene where, he falls in love with basically Siri on his phone, but he comes to find out that the software is also in all the other phones and devices as well. So what he's fallen in love with, like she falls in love with him, but she's also in love with all of these other like phone owners basically. And it wrecks his brain because he thought it was such a like a mutually exclusive relationship. It's like, no, dude, like this software is accessible by all these other users as well. So at what point do we have a scenario like that where we think, I use ChatGPT as an example. I don't think it's the best example, but it's something that everyone has access to. But at what point does that database or that algorithm, that process become sentient enough to know, hey, I'm going to go access other systems and manipulate those systems to my will? You know? Like at what point, think about, like we're getting to the point where Google Gemini, which is Google's version of ChatGPT, is built into their Android operating system. Apple is already on record saying they want to work with Google to get AI on Apple iOS. So at what point, because of the access that those algorithms and those processes will have to our own devices, who's not to say they're going to be able to, on their own fruition, do things on your device, you know?
Well, I know that ChatGPT, again, I mean, we're using ChatGPT as the example because it seems to be the most well-known. And I've come to know a lot of other AI systems over the course of this year and last year, but it's probably the most well-known that anybody can, obviously, like you said, use. It's not necessarily sentient yet, but I have heard people say that ChatGPT is pretty much just it runs itself now. So the people who actually design ChatGPT, the only time that I'm pretty sure the only time that they actually do anything with ChatGPT is when they do a software update. And that's it. It runs itself. It does its own thing. It actually can't tell you a lie.
Well,
I found that.
It can tell you, it doesn't know, if I understand correctly, it doesn't know the difference between truth and a lie. But it can tell you a lie if what is perceived as truth in the data set is factually incorrect. So an easy example would be like the database that ChatGPT is referencing scrubs a bunch of sources, but let's assume, it scrubs the entire open internet. Let's use Wikipedia as an example, right? Anyone can go on Wikipedia. This is like a high school teacher's worst nightmare, right? Anyone can go on Wikipedia and edit a Wikipedia article and just have something blatantly incorrect on there. But if that's in the data set that an AI system is pointing to use as a system of truth, it could tell you a lie, but it doesn't know it's a lie.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it could tell you, like anytime you use ChatGPT, it's always telling you, hey, fact check this. Because it doesn't, OpenAI, which is the parent company that owns ChatGPT, like they can't guarantee you the information that ChatGPT is going to give you is factually true. They're very open saying like, we don't know if it's going to be true or not. It's just what is assumed to be true based on the data set provided to the algorithm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's, again, I think as far as AI goes, I mean, I think for this particular one, I think that you are right as far as like a total like takeover. As far as to what that would look like, I mean, again, a lot of these, it's funny though, because a lot of these, out of these top 10, minus with the exception of a couple, are actually like, you can watch movies that talk about this stuff, that regard this stuff, where, it's in the future and, robots are taking over this. With AI, I don't think it's going to be how people think it's going to be, though, if it does happen. I think AI taking over is going to be implemented with some of the stuff that we've already seen, the chips, and then I don't know if you heard, but they just had the first human test trials for the Meta.
Are you talking about the Neuralink?
The Neuralink thing.
Yeah, the guy's made live tweets and like played video games with it. Like it's pretty wild.
Yeah, I haven't watched a whole lot on it yet, but
yeah. So I think you're right, though. I think it will be different in the sense that I think it'll sneak up on people. I think it'll be one of those things where it's like, think about cell phones. Maybe cell phones is a good analogy for this, where You rewind 20 years ago, like, yeah, people had cell phones, but not everyone had a cell phone. Now, everyone, like even elementary school kids have cell phones, which is crazy to think about, first of all.
I know. Yeah.
And I think AI is going to be similar too, to where right now, very small portion of the population leans on AI. But I think over time, people will start to become more reliant on AI. It won't just be a fun tool. It'll become like a crutch. Like you'll rely on it for daily activities. And it'll get to the point where you may not know how to do certain things because you rely on the AI to do it.
Well, and for those of you who are listening to this specific episode, there are a couple of episodes that we've done where we've talked about some of these topics in more broader aspects. So if you definitely want to know more about this, I'm going to touch base on this here in just a second, but go watch that episode. But it's kind of what we talked about, where you have people who go to college, who are like, let's just say young people, you know, and I don't like picking on younger people than us, but God, they make it hard not to in certain cases because of the stuff that they do. And
you're sounding like a boomer right now. I love it.
Man, I'm telling you, it's just it's hard not to. It's like I have respect for them because, don't get me wrong, some of them are very innovative in today's society. They have become a part of society. They have made great changes in what they've done. But for some of them I've had conversations with some people who just flat out they should not be allowed to get that specific degree. And I honestly, I'll give you an example before I actually talk about this. So this girl, this is after you had left Applebee's. I was bartending, and this girl, I don't know if she was intoxicated. Either way, she got her alcohol taken away, and I kicked her out. Don't care. She said she claimed to go to the University of Austin, and she was studying to become an attorney. Like she was getting her law degree from there. And we got talking about stuff and, you know, getting to political conversations. And obviously that I should have kicked myself for that, because that was my first mistake, getting into a political conversation with someone who had been drinking. Obviously the Second Amendment came up. She was like, do you even know what the Second Amendment even says? And as I'm quoting, I'm like a fourth of the way through quoting what the Second Amendment actually says. And she cuts me off and she's like, no, you don't even know what you're talking about, all this and that. And it's like she even made it seem abundant that she didn't care about the degree that she's getting. Like she doesn't care about it. She seemed like and granted this was a younger person, so she probably has a change of mindset now. But when you use AI and how AI is becoming more dominant in anything that you do now, like you can't really do anything without AI unless you're just a blue collared worker. But even then, the higher up people will utilize AI to an extent. What worries me about people relying on it is that you're going to have engineers, you're going to have doctors, you're going to have attorneys, and you're going to have all these people who are going to school for these large degrees that I'm not saying are necessarily I don't want to say certain degrees are not beneficial to society, but it's how you utilize that degree. And I get it. You go to school to become a surgeon or a doctor. You should make the money that you make. But if you have to use ChatGPT to help you get that degree, you should not be allowed to have that degree.
What if you use it like as a research assistant, though? Like you still know the material, but I mean, it's a good tool. I think it's a good tool, but it shouldn't be your brain.
Go read a book.
I mean, yeah.
You could do the exact. You could read all the books that they tell you that you were supposed to read throughout your time of becoming a surgeon, or the time that you're becoming a lawyer. And instead of just relying on like ChatGPT, hey, what does this say, and having it, and this is also too where it comes into play. Just like you said, it only will give you information that is, like, let's just say Wikipedia. If that information is on Wikipedia, it's going to give you that information even if it's the wrong information because it's on Wikipedia.
Yes, so that's assuming you're using ChatGPT. So there are AI models that are within like a closed network with specific data sets that could have been vetted. Like a good practical example, like I know I used AI takeover as a way of like a doomsday theory, but in the case of AI, like if you're a doctor or a surgeon or maybe someone that's trying to diagnose something, you could have a language learning model or an AI system that is trained on a set of peer-reviewed academic journals that could give you a diagnosis for something. It could run, 20 different symptoms and give you a 99.9% accuracy rating. I don't know, I'm just making this off the top of my head, but like it'll give you like a relatively accurate diagnosis rather than waiting days to try and figure that out.
Well, I mean, and I'll use this as so the guy that they got the Neuralink thing put in, realistically, what if billions of people got that Neuralink put in? All somebody has to do is just hit a button, and now you got an army of zombies that you control like that, because you have, and they're not going to know any different, because they're being controlled by whatever it is that you put in their brain by that chip. And so it's like that. What if AI becomes sentient and AI somehow discovers a way to control those Neuralinks?
Or even more sinister, what if you had to watch an advertisement before you could open your eyes?
What do you mean?
So your eyes are, part of your brain, right? So like they're connected to your brain. What if when you wake up in the morning, you had to watch an advertisement before you could see the world around you?
I would not want that.
I don't know. Maybe you could see a Pfizer commercial before, you see your bedroom walls.
That's the brainwashing. That's what I'm saying, man.
Oh, if you get Brain Plus, which is only, $199 per month, it's a simple charge. You get Brain Plus.
You better stop right now. I'm dead. I'm so dead.
Do you want to get better at mathematics? You could get the Mathematics Plus, and it's only $20 a month, but it's an add-on.
It's going to be like the Adobe software. It's like you could buy each individual one, or you could buy a full package and pay less, but it's only going to be less by like $1,000 a month.
Well, think about that. We're starting to see that all over the place, like with Teslas and everything. If you want to drive faster, you got to get the premium subscription to it. So,
and that's where I think it's going to come into play. That it's like people, and I'll be honest, I don't know where people get this money from. Realistically, like especially if you're paying for a Neuralink, which I don't even know how much it costs. I don't know if the guy paid for it or.
Well, I think the first actual use case of it, he actually had like a brain impairment. Like it was done to make his life better, not worse. If that makes sense.
Okay, that I didn't, like I said, I didn't read into everything. So again, for anyone who might,
but that's also the first one. Like fast forward 5 years from now, what the heck? Is it a casual outpatient procedure?
Or is it going to be something that is actually like, we're going to crack your skull open and actually implant it on your brain and then close your skull back up? Like, and I'm being real about that because it's like, right now, this is just I don't know if they usually never come out and say, hey, we're in the testing phase of this kind of stuff. And I don't ever recall. I mean, I've seen them talk about it, but I don't remember them saying anything about a testing phase. And
they did. They had a FDA clearance, and
okay,
I was just keeping close tabs. That's the only reason I knew. It wasn't like widely advertised, but they went through formal like FDA approval and all that.
And so this is being the first, one of the first people that's like, granted, to use it to make his life better. Now, is it going to stay that way? I don't think so. I think there's going to be a ton of people out there that are going to get it for all the wrong reasons. 100% get it for all the wrong reasons. And it's, more power to you.
It was, his name was Nolan Arbo. Mm-hmm. He was a 29-year-old patient who was paralyzed below the shoulders after a diving accident. He was able to play chess on his laptop and move the cursor using the Neuralink device. The implant seeks to enable people to control the computer cursor or keyboard using only their thoughts. Just crazy. Regardless of like the doomsday scenario, that's crazy that we even have that technology that you can just think it and you're like, yo, I'm moving a cursor or playing chess or whatever. Yeah.
But I think as far as the doomsday type theory, I think we're definitely very much so far ways away from this one in particular. But again, it all depends on how fast our society moves in that regard, like if they're moving extremely fast like they are currently now, because, months from now, there's going to be the next thing, like there's going to be so much stuff coming out. like the meta glasses, which I've looked into those. Those seem pretty interesting. I'm not gonna lie. For
Yeah.
real estate purposes, like I could record my conversation. Like I can. It would definitely. I've looked into those. Will I buy them? I don't know. Probably not. But
And they're Ray-Bans too, right? So they look nice.
exactly. I'm like, I need to replace my pair of Ray-Bans that I lost. And so I think we're very much so ways off from this. But is it impossible with how our world is currently looking as far as technology wise? No, I don't think it's impossible.
Yeah. Now I know you kind of have a grand finale here, which who knows? Maybe we're actually in the middle of this one. Maybe we're not. I don't know. Time's an arbitrary concept. It's difficult to tell.
Dude, I'm telling you right now, with everything that's happened in the past 4 years, I wouldn't be surprised if we're in a construct of time that we just don't understand. But to hit y'all with the number one, black hole theory. This one could definitely be a whole episode on its own because I love talking about space and black hole theory, and I love talking about that kind of because it just interests me, and I've got books that talk about the solar system and the universe and different things like that. Definitely get scientific on y'all. I'd have to go back and read the book, but it definitely is interesting enough because for those of you who don't actually know, the center of our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, is actually a black hole. So as we are doing this, to us it's very slow, but we're actually moving hundreds of thousands of miles around the solar, like around our universe right now. We're actually getting closer to the center of that galaxy. Now, along with that, on the opposite side of us, on the outer skirts of our galaxy, there's another black hole. I'll see if I can actually pull something up here in a second, but to me, I don't know if anyone out there actually understands what a black hole does or what it is. It's not like a wormhole or anything like that sends you to a completely different area. Black hole is it's a connecting point of two places. So wormhole, you're kind of in a how do I explain this? You're going into a different dimension to an extent, but a black hole, it's a connecting point of two. There's a beginning point and an end point, and you really don't know where you're going to end up at unless you send something in. But the thing is, though, is the gravitational pull of that is so exponential that you're pretty much stretched to the width of a spaghetti noodle.
I like spaghetti.
I mean, I like spaghetti too, homemade, good stuff, great stuff. Now, as far as our entire planet, I don't think it'll happen that way if it was to happen. And I think I've seen a movie or two on this, but I think as far as what would happen with our planet, I think it would disintegrate our planet. Like it would start pulling, the gravitational pull would actually start pulling stuff away from our planet. And you would start seeing like when you see the people that are in space that float the water around and stuff like that, I think you'll start seeing something similar of that happening on our planet where our atmosphere, electromagnetic fields, everything is just going to get so disoriented because of that massive force of what that black hole is doing.
Interesting. I've actually never really thought about it too much. Like, I saw Interstellar, but like it's black holes are one of those things where I really don't know what's happening there. Like, I really don't. I just know they're no bueno, and I hope I never have to interact with one. But if I ever do, I don't think I'll even realize it. It'll just be game over or whatever the heck happens in that process. But I also know you have scientists like Einstein and Stephen Hawking and these dudes that have, theorized these for decades, their entire life. But we still don't factually know. Like, I could be wrong thinking that, but I think we still don't factually know what the heck a black hole is, right? Like, I know we have like our theories, and it's like in science that theory is real, it's not fact, but it's basically fact until something else comes along to disprove it or enhance the theory.
So, to my understanding, a black hole is so there's different variants of stars. So you have your red giants, you have your blue giants. There's different variations of stars, and
It's after like the star goes supernova, right? And then
yeah. So a star will go into a supernova, and science was, even though some science classes I was not good in, I was good with this type of stuff. But when a sun gets hot enough, eventually it will go supernova. It will implode on itself, and then the black hole forms. So, but the thing is you have to think, though, it takes millions, if not billions of years for that to actually happen. So even though we're ending off on our top 10 doomsday, this one was probably just more of like a fun, interesting one to discuss, because the likelihood, this will never happen in our lifetime. Let me preface that right now. Our planet will not end in our lifetime by a black hole.
Do we know that though? Like, here's the thing, and I'm just gonna go right off the deep end on this one. And this is probably ignorance on my part, but like, how do we know that happens? Have we ever witnessed a star go supernova and become a black hole? Have we actually ever witnessed that?
No, not that I know of, because we just recently started getting actual visible pictures of what a black hole looks like.
Yeah. But like, how do we know that's the process then? And I know we're probably two of the last people you would ask that formal question to.
Dude, I worked with Stephen Hawking. I know exactly what I'm talking about right now.
Oh, so. Nice. Have you been to the island also?
No, I refuse to go there because I'm not a sick person.
I know, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, how do we know that? Like, how do we know that process? If it does take, even if it takes hundreds of years, like, how do we even observe that?
I think, so here's the thing, I don't think it's like an observation standpoint, because let's be honest here, even our most powerful satellites and cameras and everything are just now pulling up, oh, this planet exists here that could potentially inhabit life that we could go to if we needed to. Like, no, get out of here with that. If our planet ends, our planet is ending. Just let it end. I think there needs to be a reset that happens, and if we're meant to be somewhere else, cool. But as far as like actually seeing the process, I'm actually positive we have not actually seen the process of what happens. But when you calculate the numbers and you're looking at the processes, which I get how it kind of comes off as like how do you know? Like, you haven't seen that happen. Like, I get it. It's to me, it's like I understand that too, because I'm like, there's no way that happens. Like, how does that one thing happen that causes this massive thing? Now, our sun, obviously, when you look at how long our planet has been around, our sun has definitely probably been around a lot longer than that. The chances of our sun imploding and becoming a supernova, let's be honest, if our planet becomes a supernova, I'm pretty sure that's going to kill us all on its own anyways.
No doubt.
Because which that honestly could be a part of this specific number one, because that the sun imploding would be the end of all life on our planet. Like, our plants don't have a sun. That means the oxygen would deteriorate. Everything would die on our planet. So I think a black hole would be the least of our problems, because one has to happen before the other. So, and I was looking it up, and this was based on last year. It says astronomers may have discovered the closest black holes to Earth. So it says they think 2 or even 3 black holes could live just about 150 light years from our planet. Now, it's not million light years. This is like just light years. And again,
I don't even know how far away a light year is. I'll be honest with you. I know light travels fast, but like, I don't know. I drive in miles per hour,
So, I don't know how to say this, but
to infinity and beyond.
I'm just going to pull this up real quick, just because I don't know how to say this. 1 light year equals 5.879, whatever that is, plus 12. I don't know what that is.
What? How many? Is there a way to see that full? So plus 12. What is that? Are you able to copy and paste that number to see the actual true number? Or like, yeah, copy that number, the plus 12 and all that. Put that in Google and say like, what number is this? Okay, so that's
5,879,000,000,000 miles away, or in kilometers.
Yeah, we don't talk about kilometers.
That's fair. America.
Golly. Okay, so 5.88 trillion miles. Huh.
So think about that. So 150. So we're going to do this real quick. 150 times 5,879.
Yeah, there's a lot of zeros. I wish my bank account had that many zeros.
So now here's what we're gonna do. We're sciencing this right now.
Exactly. So for those listening, Google gave us another number that had an E and a plus number on there that doesn't make sense to us. So therefore, you Google that, and we ask what the actual number is yet again. I guess maybe the 14 is like 14 zeros. That's a lot of zeros, though. Oh, you know what? Hey, type in do gemini.google.com, or just Google Gemini and then type in that number and ask it what number this is. So just Google the word Gemini. And then, yeah, the top one. You might have to sign your soul away. Yeah, tell it to chat. Just, yeah, there you go.
I won't do that right now.
Yeah, just like copy that and say like, what number is this?
There's your number, folks. 88,185,000,000,000 miles away.
Okay.
So that's a very long way away. Now, when you think about it, again, y'all, we are sciencing this real quick. I have to do.
Yeah. What are you looking up? How fast is Oh.
So 17,500 miles per second is how fast a black hole can roughly move through the universe. Now, we're actually going to science this real quick.
Gonna science it.
I need a calculator real quick.
Remember when your teacher back in grade school was like, you got to learn the math because you're not always going to have a calculator. Now we got Google Gemini.
88, was it 88, 185, 185, 123, 123, 123, divided by 17.5. So that means a black hole, we would eventually probably come into contact with one of those 2 to 3 black holes in 5,039,140,857 years.
Yeah. It'll be somewhere down the bloodline.
Science.
So that's probably the smartest thing we've had on this podcast by far. Out of all the what is this, episode 13, I think, by this point?
It's something like that, but who's counting? We're just here.
Yeah.
But it says that, granted, the overall, so 150 years away, so or light years away. So like that's realistically how long it would take for a black hole. So again, our planet probably won't even exist, because if I think I'm not mistaken, back in high school, they were talking about how our sun has like another 5 million years before it implodes on itself.
And like, how do we even know that? What is the range that we are pulling that from?
Exactly. So again, these are all theories. Some are conspiracy. Some are science, as what we just witnessed here. And again, I did do work with Stephen Hawking. I can't ask him to confirm these numbers or deny these numbers, so I'll have to contact my unknown contact at NASA to find out for sure. But that is to be determined later. But as far as just a black hole happening, the likelihood of that black hole, one of those coming into contact with us, is a lot less than a black hole that would form from our own sun, because it would have, if it does actually happen within the next 5 million years or 50 million years. I don't remember the exact number. It was a 5. I know that.
We'll all be dead.
We'll all be dead. This planet probably won't even be alive by then. And if it is, then, well, that's going to kill us if Jesus doesn't come back first. And again, that could happen 5 million years from now. Like, again, we don't know what's going to happen. These are all theories. But I think overall, this is probably the least likely to happen. But it's definitely one of the most, in my opinion, entertaining ideas to happen, because we can talk about it all day. And here's the thing, though. Stars, I don't, so suns, like what a sun is just a massive star. And we have a bunch of small stars that are circling just everywhere around us. Now, the likelihood of one of those imploding on itself is next to none. So unless something like that was to happen next week, then we're still going to be here. And even if one of those imploded on itself, I don't think it would be a strong enough event to have, like, for that to actually happen. I'm pretty sure stars die because stars die all the time, but it depends on how big the actual star is and how much energy it has built up over time of when it actually dies off. So,
yeah, and how far away it is. Like, you may not even see it till 100 years from now,
Yeah, and again, well, at least us, I don't plan on living till I'm 129 years old. I don't want to live till I'm 129 years old. I won't have to be here to witness that. Now, would it be pretty cool to see? Sure. Like, I would actually enjoy seeing a black hole. Like, that would be pretty cool. Now, I don't want anything to happen like some interstellar type stuff, because that would trip me out enough. Now, there is a theory out there, though, that black holes can take you to the dimensions that we can't perceive. So here we have the third dimension, which is everything that's 3D, physical, tangible. I don't know about the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension and so on and so forth, but there's theories out there about that.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you have the 2D, or the 2 dimension, which is where Paper Mario lives with Paper Peach and Paper Luigi and all the, that whole universe. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So we made it through 10 doomsday scenarios or theories as to how everything will come to an end. So let me ask you this. Which was your favorite, or which do you think is most likely out of all of them? Or no, which is your favorite? Yeah, let's do that. Which is your favorite? Because it could be outlandish, but...
So my favorite, as far as just like... Personally, so I like the set, like, obviously the second coming of Jesus. That's not just because it's like I've read so much, and I've kind of been in studies about it a lot, that I'm just like, I'm ready. I want to see what's going to happen, and I think that's probably, and I think the reason for that also too is because I think it's the most unknown, because at least with a lot of these other ones, there's evidence out there that supports it. Which I'm not saying there's not evidence that doesn't support Jesus, because obviously he was living at one point. But a lot of the other ones are based on numbers and science and facts. It's the most unknown one that it piques my interest the most. Now, as far as like favorite outlandish one, I don't know. I'd probably say either the black hole theory or the zombie apocalypse. Though it'd be a toss up between those two.
Yeah.
What about you?
I don't know if it's a favorite. The one I always go back to is just the nuclear war. I've just gone down that rabbit hole so much, and I'm just like, man, that's one we could see in our lifetime, which is terrifying to think about. I think the powers that be are smart enough not to click the button, but ooh-wee, if they do, boy, buckle up.
Yeah, well, I think at the end of the day on that one, though, and again, for anyone who's listening, like a couple of these, I think at least one or two of these we've actually done episodes, like solo episodes on.
Yeah.
But stay tuned, because a lot of these could be their own solo episodes that we could do a full-fledged, like, we didn't even scratch the surface of some of the stuff. We just kind of just barely touched on it. But I'm with you on the nuclear warfare, though. Like, it's probably the one that's most likely to happen in our lifetime, and it's very interesting. Like, again, like you said, like the powers that be are just like, hey, we're not going to push this, but knowing that people that we can't control have the power to push that just to end all life, and there's no way to destroy them. You can't destroy them without them going off. So it's like we're kind of just stuck between a rock and a hard place of like what's to come and what's to happen. So
yeah. So on that happy note, to anyone listening, let us know, is there something that is on your top 10 that maybe we didn't include on our top 10? Because it could find its way to have its own episode here in the near future. But until then, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, follow all of the different verbs and terms across the different websites you could find us on. But until next time, we'll see ya.